In this video, we're going to be talking about how do we solve literal equations. So before we talk about how do we solve them, let's talk about what they are. So a literal equation is an equation that relates two or more different variables to each other. So an equation that you guys may have seen as y equals mx plus b. So here I am relating my y and my x, but also I have a relationship between m and b here. Like there are four different variables. Then they all stand for numbers, so they can interchange. Another literal equation that you guys have seen is distance equals rate times time. So this is an equation that is relating r and t to d. So it's relating rate and time to distance. And like this, there are many equations, especially in the sciences and STEM fields, that relate two or more different variables to each other. So in order to solve a literal equation, we're not going to get a number, but what we're going to be doing is understanding a relationship of one variable in terms of the other. So for example, here we have a relationship between distance, about distance, and with respect to rate and time. If we were trying to figure out what is the relationship of time with respect to rate and distance, well, we would have to solve for t. Same thing for rate. If we wanted to get an equation for rate with respect to time and distance, we would have to solve for it. And we're going to use inverse operations here in order to solve for a variable in terms of the other. So let's go ahead and fill that in as well. The other or others, right? Because you can have many different variables in the equation. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at the first example. So this first example is basically the one we just talked about, distance equals rate times time. Let's suppose that we want to get an equation in terms of rate. So let's go ahead and highlight the variable that we're solving for. Well, we want to isolate this variable. What's happening to it? I'm multiplying it by t, so in order to get rid of the multiplying by t, I'm going to divide both sides by t. And so that means that distance over time gives you the rate. I can take my distance and divide it by time, and that's going to give me my rate. In this case, I have an equation that says that y equals x divided by 4. So I want to solve this for x. Right now, I'm dividing x by 4. So let's go ahead and highlight the variable that I'm trying to solve for. In order to get rid of dividing by 4, I need to multiply by 4. That would be the inverse operation that would work there. So in this case, 4 times y, or just 4y, equals x. Now here I have, I'm bumping it up a notch. I have two variables in this equation, so d and h. And I want to solve this equation for d. So again, I need to perform inverse operation. So right now I am multiplying d by 5 and adding 10h to it. So the first thing that I need to undo is adding 10h. We need to subtract 10h from both sides. There are no h's here for me to subtract h from and combine like terms, so we're just going to write minus 10h on this side. So what I have here is 5d is equal to 10 minus 10h. When I do this, I'm just basically giving you an expression of what that would be. I cannot combine the 10 and the 10h because they do not both have an h. They're not like terms. And now the next thing I would do to solve for d is to, get rid of the multiplying by 5 by dividing both sides by 5. So I'm dividing both sides by 5, and in this case with division and multiplication, everything needs to be multiplied. So that means I need to multiply the 10 by 5, which would give me 2, and the negative 10h by 5, which would give me negative 2h. Now my last example here, it's pretty much the same thing. I just have different variables here. This one I'm going to solve for y. You are going to see this a lot in the near future when we start with lines. So I just want to get you comfortable with it right now. So right now what's happening with y is that I am multiplying it by 2 and adding 4x. So first I need to subtract 4x from both sides, and just like in the last example, there were no x's for me to subtract this from, so I'm just going to write minus 4x. So right now I have 2y is equal to 15 minus 4x. And then the next thing I need to do to solve for 1y is divide by 2, so we're going to divide everybody here by 2. this 2 will cancel out, and I have y is equal to 15 divided by 2. Yes, that's a decimal, but we can leave it as a fraction. We can't even simplify 15 over 2, so we can just leave it as that. And then minus 2x. All right, so that is the end of this video, and I hope that you found this useful in how to solve a literal equation.